Hello and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. I'm Kimberly Dondo, and today we'll be discussing the autumn statement, which just happened this week. So I'm joined by the rest of the editorial team, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'm Tom Brown. I'm editor of Money Marketing.
I'm Amanda Newman-Smith, feature writer.
Dan Cooper, news editor.
Gareth McQuaid, reporter.
And Lois Vallely, chief reporter.
Thank you guys for joining me. So as I said, the autumn statement did happen this week. And I think just off the top, I just wanted to find out what the initial reaction was from the industry. Was it a positive one? Was it a negative reaction? Or was it just, I don't know,
I put a tweet up in the morning. It was actually sarcastic, but maybe it didn't come across as sarcastic through writing, saying, "Is everyone excited?" And all the advisors were responding, going, no, definitely not excited. So there was that. I think the thing with the autumn statement is most things are leaked in the national media like a week before it. So there were probably no huge surprises in there. I did get a specific, I'm sure everyone else did as well, got absolutely inundated with reaction comments, probably like approaching 300. But one stood out today was from Investec saying, and it was specifically a comment about the advice profession and how, so their head of strategic partnerships, Simon Taylor, thinks that the autumn statement is going to boost demand for advice. But he also says that the profession is under strain and it's getting worse. So he said it's going to boost demand for advice because people are very unsure about the whole lifetime allowance thing, whether it's even there or not, when it's going to not be there anymore, what that even means for them. There's a lot of, this is what he said. I mean, I kind of don't know it myself. A lot of things about, how complicated tax has got and how some people who are in the lower tax bracket don't even realize they need to complete a tax return, things like that. But at the same time, according to Investec, 50% of advisors are planning to retire in the next 5 years. And that is a stat that I've heard sort of similar iterations of throughout. So the whole profession is sort of under strain to get. He says that it should be a golden era for advice firms, but at the moment demand is exceeding supply because there just aren't enough advisors, and it's only going to get worse because all these advisors are going to retire in the next 5 years, and then maybe there aren't enough coming through to fill the gap. So that was an interesting reaction, I think, a bit different to the autumn statement because everything else was about just generally pensions or inheritance tax, things like that.
Yeah, I just picking up on that. I certainly got a vibe of that kind of reaction in terms of the lack of movement on income tax thresholds and the fact that a lot more people will be dragged into tax bans as a result of fiscal drag, and whether or not that is just going to lead to a lot more people not being able to access the right advice or just not knowing that they need to be advised at all, which I thought was quite interesting. I think that was a point that was also being made by that same person.
Tom, we do this thing where we try not to use the word interesting because I personally overuse it and I think the whole team does. So last time I had a
thesaurus. She said this thing, but she only just started this.
I only started it last time.
All right, well, I've used up my quota of interestings for this. I'm going to use fascinating next time.
I'm going to call you all out. And if I do it, you have to call me out too.
Okay.
Intriguing.
We will, don't worry.
Riveting.
Was some enlightening points that you made there, Lois and Tom. Thank you. So, Tom, I want to go back to you and ask what stood out for you with what the Chancellor laid out for his plan in the autumn statement.
Well, the big headline figure obviously was the cut in the standard rate of employee national insurance, which went down from 12 to 10%. I mean, that was obviously predicted beforehand, but the two surprises mainly were that, first of all, that it was a 2% cut rather than a 1% cut, and that it will come into force on the 6th of January rather than at the start of the tax year, with the Chancellor saying that they bring in urgent legislation to have make that happen. I thought it was interesting because, I mean, obviously... Sorry.
It was
This is really
riveting
good. Slow
because
it down.
It was noteworthy because, I mean, obviously national insurance is focused specifically on income from work. So a national insurance cut can be presented as an incentive and a reward to workers. According to the Chancellor, it will, if you're a person on an average salary of about 35 grand, they'll save over 450 a year. So that's quite significant. From the point of view of financial advice, though, obviously you don't pay national insurance on private pension income or after the state pension age, so most retirees won't benefit from it. But actually, on my story on this, I quote Sian Steele, who's a head of tax at Evelyn Partners, who makes the point that retirees don't benefit from the fact that retirees don't benefit from the cut could deflect some of the criticism from the perceived intergenerational unfairness, quote unquote, of leaving the pensions triple lock unchanged, which I'm sure we'll come back to. In terms of the overall numbers, we were hearing that the national insurance cut could cost the Treasury about $9 billion a year, but that is certainly cheaper for the Treasury than making any move on cutting income tax or changing the income tax thresholds, which is obviously, as I mentioned, the other dog that didn't bark in the autumn statement.
I did see a tweet reaction from an advisor just saying it was quite cynical, and they were like, "Oh, I wonder if there's a general election happening next year after that particular announcement."
Oh, I don't. You wouldn't know it. You certainly wouldn't know that, surely.
Are you suggesting there may be political considerations in some of the autumn statements?
I mean, that's what they were suggesting. I have no opinion on it. I am just on the fence, just sitting here watching everything unfold.
Very diplomatic. Well done.
What about you, Darius? What stood out for you that the Chancellor announced yesterday?
I would say it's probably we didn't actually announce it when he's up with the dispatch box, but the changes he's made to ISAs probably stood out for me. It was
that one of the list that he didn't actually say out? The 100 and...
it was 110. Yeah, it was one of the changes implemented, but didn't actually get any voice time, as it were. And in general, the sort of the change he made to ISAs was sort of and not a lot of negative reaction to it, but people wanted, the general consensus that people wanted him to go a bit more further. So that's where sort of the disappointment came from. But he said people would be able to make multiple ISA subscriptions of the same type from April 2024. And like I said, most people are happy about this, and they'll be able to hold more than one particular ISA in the tax year, and so it will help savings, and it'll make it easier for people to save. But like in AJ Bell in particular, they've been sort of campaigning to they think the ISA market is too complicated because there's 6 types of ISAs, and they want to sort of consolidate it into one type of ISA. And that obviously didn't happen. And they've actually done research into it, and they've found that a majority of advisors think it's become unnecessarily complicated, and they would actually back an idea of a single ISA as well. So like I said, they were happy that he's made this change, but wanted to go further. But also he did, and also moved the Chancellor to move the age which can apply for cash ISA from 16 to 18, and also he's included long-term asset funds and open-ended property funds in the innovative finance ISA, which just makes it one of the 6 ISAs. And again, that had quite a bit of a split reaction. Quilter was quite happy about it. Again, AJ Bell wasn't as happy about it. I would just say when it comes to open-ended property funds in October, 3 open-ended property funds were either closed or suspended. So it sort of comes at an odd time to suddenly include those particular types of funds in one of the ISAs, because it's just off the heels of some negative news surrounding the area. So I thought that was sort of odd timing for it. But also the British ISA of Bryce that everyone was sort of talking about got a lot of news attention. That wasn't announced, and there's no new type of ISA created. So that didn't happen. So that people who supported that obviously weren't too happy about it. But yeah, I think there's no necessarily negative reaction to the ISA tweak, but people, I think there's a hunger for more to happen in that environment.
So they were underwhelmed.
Underwhelmed would be a good quote. Yeah, I think there was a really good AJ Bell quote. I thought that AJ Bell head of retirement policy Tom Selby said that the ISA move was sensible but hardly an earth-shattering change, and I thought that sort of summed up the market quite well. Really, like it was it wasn't big as it were.
Right.
Mm.
Well, maybe that will be something we can look at when the budget happens next year. But Amanda, what about you? What stood out for you in the autumn statement?
Probably something a little bit different to everyone else. What stood out for me, I was looking at the focus on helping people who have health conditions and disabilities find jobs. Because I think that made sort of part of the speech. I was listening to that at home.
Yeah.
I've got mixed opinions on this because I've just written a piece on for our next issue. December, January? Yeah. Just written a piece about how the industry can help advisors, so new advisors who have health conditions, kind of become advisors, get into the industry and that sort of thing. So I love the idea of if you're disabled and have health conditions, that you don't have to be sitting at home claiming benefits. But the reality is, that is an issue for some people. They've got to find a job that suits them. It's not just stick them in any job. So I'm kind of a little bit worried about what was announced later, the sort of punitive side of it. If you don't find work in look for a job within 6 months or find a position, then there's going to be mandated stuff, and benefits potentially stopped. I just think stand back a bit, like have a heart. These people are if you're on benefits and disabled, it's not a picnic. It's a way of life that struggle. If you've got disability, you might need more to run your home. You've got health issues, you might need more heating, da-di-da. So I just sort of sat there thinking, is that the best we can do? I like the initial bit, but I'm worried about the detail and how it's going to be implemented, and will we be sort of hounding disabled people, oh, you must work. Work is a great thing. I'm not kind of arguing with that. You can have like a bit of confidence and a bit of extra money in their pocket, and I know they're allowed to keep a certain amount. I think it's £404 a month off the top of my head that they're going to be allowed to keep if they sort of try work and sort of keep their benefits. But I am just a little bit concerned. I think, Kim, the only sort of plus side, concrete plus side at the moment, I think, is could it boost protection? Because if you're worried about being disabled or have a health condition in the future, are you going to be sitting there saying, oh well, this is going to be reformed, and the benefit system's a bit of a mess anyway? Maybe rather than take my chances there, is it worth getting a protection policy so I've kind of got a bit of security if I become disabled? But I don't know, I think it's a bit of a mess all in all.
It is quite complicated, but then when you talked about protection there, I was like, yes, that is a fair point. It could boost people getting critical illness or any of those other policies that are important that most people don't think about until they're out of work. But then it also made me think about Mamadou's piece where he covered a person who has long COVID, which a lot of protection companies aren't necessarily deeming as an illness as of yet, because it hasn't been a long enough period of time. So to me, that means that there will be a number of people, potentially millions of people, that could fall through the cracks because they can't go back to work because they have this chronic condition that flares up sometimes, which stops them from being able to go to work. But then they also can't have that protection that would protect their income or whatever.
It's a really complicated area because there's so many different types of disabilities, some invisible, some very visible, probably stopping people from doing all sorts of different kinds of jobs. So Yeah, it's definitely a concern.
And it's not until you have someone in your life with one of those conditions that you actually see it and you go, oh, this person isn't just lazy and wanting not to work. They want to, because the worst thing in the world is actually being stuck at home. It's not fun. And not having any money.
That's what I didn't like, though. The fact that, oh, you're disabled, you're lazy, you just don't want to work. I think that's coming back, and I don't like that, because I know disabled people and they do want to work. Some are doing voluntary work. So it's not a case of, I just sort of fancy sitting at home and I can just sort of say, oh, I'm disabled. It's not that at all. It's, I just think, do these people actually know any disabled people? So, I don't know. We'll see what happens, I think.
I didn't particularly like the way it was presented as a kind of like, we're really giving people the opportunity to come back into work. It was presented as a sort of like a generous gesture by the government about, all this unlocked potential that we're now going to give you the opportunity to unlock. Whereas I kind of think where the rubber hits the road, in fact, it's going to lead with a lot of people effectively having to prove to the government, actually, I'm not able to work, and these are the reasons, and a far more kind of harsh environment in which they have to prove that, I suspect, is how it will work out in practice, rather than a lot of people, grateful people saying, well, this is wonderful, I've been given the chance to work again. So, I thought
you gave me a job. That's perfect for me.
A distinct.
And also, thinking about the fact that they also mentioned the fact that there's a massive backlog in terms of like with NHS and getting your doctor's appointments when you need to. So if you then need to prove as to why you can't return to work, but your doctor's like, I can't see you until in 2 months' time, then what happens during that time period?
True.
I think that point was made by a lot of the disabled charities. They're not happy about this. They kind of like the principle, but the detail, I think, like me, a bit concerned. But,
okay, thanks. Great, Amanda. Dan, so what did you think about the autumn statement? What stood out for you?
I think a couple of things, really. Obviously, pensions were kind of centre stage, as we kind of expected beforehand. And there was obviously a lot of talk around the consultation on the sort of the one pension pot for life. Yeah. And they're saying that, on average now, people generally have around about 11 jobs in a lifetime. And so there's this issue of, sort of multiple pensions and kind of lost pension pots. So the idea is to kind of bring it all under one umbrella and just have one pension pot from which you can withdraw from, which, is way to simplify the system. So that was quite interesting. All the stuff around that. Announcing the reforms to allow savers to choose their own pension scheme for automatic enrolment.
But how would that work for the employer?
I know, and who's
that's
in charge of it?
Yeah,
who's policing it?
So like the HR department is going to be like, okay, this person is at JP Morgan, this person's at Nest. How is that?
And are they responsible for, if the consumer or client makes a bad decision about where to put their pension?
Yeah.
Good question. No, that's what the questions. That's what the critics of the scheme is saying, is that like you said, it's going to be difficult to manage.
It just feels really weird that they introduced this before, but they've been talking about the pensions dashboard forever. Like, wouldn't it just be better for them to bring...
Maybe they should just focus on that.
Yeah, focus on the pensions dashboard, which was meant to fix all of these issues.
And was meant to have come in this year or next year?
Years ago, but this year it was meant to come in. The most
recent thing was this year, and now it's like 2026 or something.
Yeah,
I bet it won't. Yeah, weird. But Darius, what was your stat you had from, was it Pension Bee?
It was, from Pension Bee. It was, following the Pot for Life announcement, it was 76% of pension savers expressed they would consider opting for the new model, a Pot for Life. So there is, the immediate reaction is that there seems to be, some want or hunger for it. But obviously the questions you ask are sort of questions that naturally arise when
you go for
from that survey, it would be classed.
I think for the consumer, like, it makes sense and it's fine, but I'm just thinking the admin side of it for the employer of each
and
person.
the providers.
Yeah, and the providers.
Weird.
Well, we'll see how it pans out. And finally, Lois, I know that you weighed in on the triple lock. So do you want to tell us a bit more?
Just first, Dan, did you say everything you wanted to? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of led on nicely. I think only two other things I was going to mention was the sort that stood out for me was the inheritance tax remaining untouched. There was again kind of the rumours in a couple of days beforehand it might be the case, and obviously Chancellor sort of left it untouched in favour of the cuts of national insurance and so on. So yeah, it's just kind of the industry reaction is mixed on that one really. Some see it as well. It's hardly a surprise because it's inheritance tax. A report came out last week, I think, saying that the Treasury stands to make 7.8 billion in IHT receipts in 23-24, and I think that figure is going to go up to an estimated like 9.8 billion by 28-29. So obviously it's a big money spinner for the Treasury. So that I guess that's one reason why perhaps he didn't touch it, and the other one being that it affects a much smaller number of people than say income tax or national insurance. So at a time of we're in the cost of living crisis, and is that going to look good? Cutting the tax that generally is perceived to be for the rich and wealthy. So yeah, that was an interesting one. But yeah, again, some advisors said it was a missed opportunity to simplify what's quite a complex tax.
Oh, I've got a tweet
so again,
on that.
Okay.
So Nick Miller is a pensions expert. She tweeted like a little snippet from the abolition of the lifetime allowance document, and it says the only exceptions are APLS DBs and PPLS DBs, which are never subject to the SLS DBC.
I saw
even
this.
Pensions experts don't know what that means.
Someone was like, "This is alphabet soup."
That was me. I said that.
It was you. I saw your tweet. Thank you.
Yeah, funny.
But yeah.
And the last thing from me was just on the confirmation that the lifetime allowance will be abolished. I think was touched upon earlier on, and just kind of how that's going to work going forward in terms of the new rules. That's
scant.
No, it is scant on detail at the moment. There's talk of sort of two new lifetime limits being created. One with a lump sum allowance set at 268,000, which is a quarter of the current LTA, and then secondly a lump sum and death benefits allowance set at 1,073,000, which is the current allowance, sort of incorporating both tax-free lump sums while alive and lump sums paid on death. So again, like it's the details scant at the moment, but it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of weeks when it all unfolds what the plan is going forward.
Definitely. Triple lock, my favorite topic.
Yeah, go.
So there was speculation before the autumn statement that, well, actually, I'll just say what happened first. So the triple lock was upheld, or will be upheld, which means that in April next year, the state pension will rise in line with average earnings growth at 8.5%. What people were saying might happen before is that there's concern that was sort of skewed by a large public sector or large payment of public sector bonuses in May to July, I think, was average earnings growth between May to July this year. And if he had discounted public sector bonuses from the average earnings growth, then the rise would have been 7.8% instead of 8.5%. But he's decided to keep it in place. And I wrote a big feature about the pension triple lock in, I think it was for the November issue.
Yeah.
Just looking at, interesting because the public's perception of the state pension in general, their understanding of what the state pension is, for one, is not very good. And what the triple lock is, even worse. So if the government says they're going to tinker with the triple lock at all, or even mention scrapping it or replacing it with something, what the public generally hears is we're going to put your state pension down. So I feel like maybe that was a vote winner, keeping triple lock in place.
Oh, you're not on the fence at all. You've hopped off the fence.
But the general industry consensus is probably sensible for now, but the triple lock and just state pension in general is going to need to be looked at in the future, preferably by a sort of independent body via an independent review, rather than all being tied up so much in politics and being sort of used as a political playing card. So
yeah, I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about this and what it could potentially be, whether that be a double lock, but just because there's so many ways they could move forward and they hadn't alluded to which way they would, I think they did need a lot more time than just to announce it, I feel like it probably would have been a mistake to have just not taken into account public sector bonuses, because part of the triple lock is to take into account bonuses. So if they suddenly said, oh, this year we're not going to take into account bonuses, I think it was in September 2021, they said that for 2022 year, they were going to just turn the triple lock into a double lock. But then, so Steve Webb, the former pensions minister, when I spoke to him for my cover feature in November, he was saying, there's only so many times you can do that on a rule like the triple lock before it sort of becomes not a rule, and then what are you even doing? Becomes null, yeah. But thank you guys so much for joining me today and kind of enlightening me with everything that you got from the autumn statement. I was just there watching you all furiously type while I tried to furiously keep our socials updated at the same time, and eat pizza. The pizza kept us sustained, which was great. So thank you guys for joining me for this podcast, and I look forward to speaking to you in our end of month podcast. Definitely. Thanks, Kim.
Great. Thank you, Kim.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.